You said the golden thread that ties everything together. What do you mean by that?
It's the bond which brings us all together, that sort of little touch of gold. And I think that's the symbology of the golden thread in this tie. It binds the three forces together. Although they're fiercely competitive, you play any sports between the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, you know that, you're on the other side if you're on the other side. But when the time comes, it is a bond of unity together. We're all in it together. So I think that's the symbology of it. It is a reminder that whilst we're entirely separate in our organizations, I'm proud of that. In truth, we serve the same purpose.
Welcome, Gentlemen Wise. Today, I'm excited to have a guest with me. His name is Ash from the Chaps Guide. So anyways, I'd like to welcome Ash to the show.
Thank you, Ben. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here.
Fellow creator in this niche, which is menswear on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a funny old thing, isn't it? Particularly in a world where seemingly casuality is the epidemic which is sweeping the world. So it's nice to be amongst people who like to dress well for, improvement to self-esteem, not just your outward appearance. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing these days how people don't realize the importance of dress. And yes, we are getting more casual, but that's not helping us. Anyways, Ash, you're here to talk about your 5 favorite ties.
So the first tie I'm going to talk about is this one, right? So I realized when I was looking at these ties, there's a bit of a theme. They all have a few of them have very similar coloring. So this is the tie, the regimental tie of the Royal Air Force. So I served in the RAF from the age of 17 to 27, 10-year period of my life. And this tie is the tie which anybody who served in the RAF may wear. It's the kind of what we call the regimental tie. I know there isn't quite the culture of military ties in the US and other parts of the world, but certainly anywhere which has been touched by the UK and the British Empire, we have this thing about military ties, school ties as well, sporting ties. They all have a very strong relevance to us. And the reason why we have our regimental ties is so that we signal to other people that, we've been part of that body. I'm very proud of my military service. It was an important part of my life, part of my life journey. Now I've been exited the military for, 30 years or so. But it became more important to me in more recent years as I appreciate, the passing of time. And interestingly, one of the things I do with my life, I'm a funeral celebrant. So the UK is a largely secular country. It's not particularly religious. And many people, when they come to the end of their life journey, they don't wish to have a religious-oriented funeral ceremony. So this is where people like myself, a funeral celebrant, will come along and we'll officiate at their funeral for them. And I did one 2 days ago. And the gentleman that we were seeing off was a former RAF chap. So I wore my RAF tie to officiate at his funeral. And as I looked in that room, speaking to the audience of 100 people, half of them were wearing the same tie as me. And it makes you realize that the tie, for me, and that's in this tie, more than anything, it signals my association with a tribe of people. These are my people. The man who I helped see off at his funeral, I'd never met him, but he was family because we took the same oath. We served the same king and queen, and we were part of the same community. And for me, that's why this tie was the first one I talked about today. It's probably the most important one. If I'm going to a special event where there's a likelihood of meeting military veterans, I'll wear this tie. It always starts conversations because people will come up to you and they will say, "Where did you serve?" And it brings us together. It's one of those things. It's only a tie, but it demonstrates really the value of the tie. It's only a small piece of material, little practical value. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really keep you warm, doesn't do much at all, but it's possibly the most powerful item of clothing in a situation like that.
I love that about the British culture where ties represent something bigger than just, oh, I like this color with this suit. Like that's such a shallow way that we look at ties. It's so much nicer when you have this history behind them with the association with the group.
The classic example of this is the King Charles. So he's obviously patron of hundreds of charities. He's served in each one of the armed forces at one point or another. He's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. If he's going to an event for a particular military body or a charity, he wears the tie. I know it's his valet will have to sort of manage probably a wardrobe of hundreds of ties, but he's always got the right tie for the occasion that he's going to, because it's part of the the identification of the group that I'm visiting. It's showing respect for them that if I'm a patron of this charity, I will wear that charity's tie. And that is an excellent segue into my next tie, Ben. Tell you the story of this tie. Now, I know what you think. It looks very similar to the RAF tie. It's not quite the same, right? As you can see, the stripes go in a different direction on this one, but I'll tell the story of this one. So, and I designed this one myself, so it must have been subliminally that I was thinking of the RAF tie. About 14 years ago, I set up a charity, a non-profit organization, which still exists today, and called the Senior Citizen Liaison Team. And our goal was to provide a number of services which prevent older people, particularly those affected by loneliness and isolation, from falling victim to crime. So we provided, public sort of presentations. We published a magazine, lots of things which helped people. And when I started that charity, I realized that in order to sort of capture the zeitgeist of us beginning this new endeavor, we needed to have a brand, an identifiable brand. So we obviously had a uniform, we had a crest made up, which we would wear on our t-shirts and sweatshirts and jackets and the like, and blazers. And one of the things, being a tie guy, obviously, you'll get this. One of my first thoughts was, we need a tie. We need a charity tie. I don't think anybody else thought that, but I certainly did. And I was chair of trustees, so I got the deciding vote. So I set out and I designed this tie. The colours on this, actually, although they look similar to the RAF one, have meaning. So the burgundy colour was just our corporate colour. All of our uniforms and clothes were burgundy. So that carried over from that. The dark blue, which is a navy colour, that was related to law enforcement, because blue is the colour of, the police generally, certainly here in the UK. And as most of us were law enforcement who volunteered for this charity in addition to our day jobs, we felt that was an appropriate carryover. And then the small silver stripe you can just about see, delineating the colours, that was meant to indicate the silver community, which was often what we refer to as the older adult population, the silver group. So this tie, actually, our identifying tie when we went to anything where we wanted to dress up a little.
There's two things you said there. The symbolism behind that tie. There's symbolism in the colors, and that symbolism is important. It also harkens back to the previous tie, which was part of a group. Now you have a tie that represents the symbolism of that group and the personal element, how that tie represents a time period or a memory in your life. And I think that is very common for ties. This tie really embodies all three of those things. So we're really coming to understand a little bit more of the depth and beauty of the necktie.
So tie number 3. So this tie still has a relationship with my charitable endeavors, because here we go, have a look at that one. It's sort of cream with a black stripe, and it has a recurring motif in the cream sections. And this tie I was given. The charity which I spoke of became quite a big part of my life, actually. And after about 10 years or so, I think this was 2016, this came into my life. There's a charitable body called the League of Mercy. So this is a body which had been around since the late 1800s, founded by Queen Victoria's husband, Prince Albert, I believe. And basically this charity existed to throw the light upon and recognize people who are active in the fields of alleviating suffering and improving the lives of people who are sick, who are lonely, who are elderly, things like that. So the vulnerable, basically. So I went along. There was a big ceremony in London, in the Mansion House. The Lord Mayor of London was present. And the president of the League of Mercy, a gentleman called Lord Lingfield, presented this medal to me. And along with the medal came a tie. And this is the tie, which comes with the Order of the League of Mercy. So it's a very limited group of people, only 30 to 40 of us per year, who are the recipients of that award. And in fact, the little badge, hang on, let me get it. The little badge I'm wearing on my lapel is a sort of day-to-day symbol of the award, and which I wear just to break up the lapel generally. My parents were present when I received the award at the investiture, and it anchors me at a point in history where I had to dress in sort of full formal court dress, with the tails and the full attire. That was the first time I ever had to dress up like that in my life. So to receive that award and then to have the tie afterwards became very much a special moment in my life. So, and I do like the tie. It's quite a strong tie. So that's another one which is important to me, and for a very obvious reason.
Yeah, I like that fourth dimension. You're painting a picture of how wide the necktie can affect a person. you know. And I think in your case, it sounds like neckties really have affected your life in many, many ways.
Oh yeah, they've been my companion for significant moments in my life. I mean, what did I wear? I wore a bow tie on my wedding day actually because it was a black tie. I was trying to think, did I wear a special tie on my wedding day? Have I forgotten to mention that one? But no, it was a bow tie, so I escaped that one. But another relationship. So moving on, my fourth tie now. This tie, another striped tie. I mean, everything is striped. I know. This tie is a club tie. Actually, it's a member of a club, members of the club which I belong to, and it's called the Union Jack Club. Now, the Union Jack Club is a members club in London, on the south bank of London, and to be a member of the Union Jack Club, you have to have been in the armed forces of the UK, and it's like a huge hotel in which there are 300 rooms, I think. I think it was created by Queen Victoria to allow servicemen and women, or would have been servicemen at the time, to come to London, the sort of capital of the British Empire. A year ago, actually, the club decided to create its own tie. We hadn't had a club tie previous to that in the 100 or so years of the existence of the Union Jack Club. So they created about 3 different prototypes, and there are thousands of us members, and we were all asked to vote on which tie we felt was most fitting to represent the Union Jack Club. So if you look at the tie, you will note that there is red. Now, the red stripe is the army. The army is signified by red. So the British Army is the red stripe. The Navy is obviously the Royal Navy, the senior service, as we call it here, because it was the first organized military service in this country. And the light blue, the aerial color, of course, represents the Royal Air Force. The golden stripe is what ties it all together. The golden thread which ties all the services together. So it has meaning, and it was the one which won the vote. And yeah, it's a lovely tie. I always wear it when I visit the club, and it's actually good colors as well. It goes with many items of clothing. So I'm not saying I voted for this one because of the colors, but certainly it didn't harm that I realized they could fit in with lots of my clothes and add a little pop of color.
All of your ties, though, navy, burgundy. This one has a little light blue, but
It
I'm
does.
seeing a pattern.
Oh well, there's going to be another pattern. Tie number 5, my last tie. You're going to think you're seeing double again, right? But there's a lot of commonality between these ties. I think what it is, I think navy and burgundy go so well with men's clothing. They do look very similar. You're absolutely right. And I think the reason for that is because burgundy and navy is so wearable across many elements of men's clothing. So with this tie on my channel, which you kindly named the Chaps Guide when we started this, I think of that channel as a gathering point, an opportunity for men who are interested in sartorial matters to come together. I often talk about, self-development and things, and offer my views on, personal progression, various tools in that field. But generally, we often talk about clothing. That's where it comes back to. And over the years, I've held a number of in-person meetings with guys up in London. I did a few in the States, actually. And we kind of formed this informal thing, which I call the Nirvana Club. The reason I call it the Nirvana Club is when I speak on my channel, I often say that we're all on the journey to Chap Nirvana. So Chap for me is short term for gentleman. So we often say Chaps here in the UK as a shorthand version of gentleman. So Chap Nirvana for me is that place where we would all like to be, where we are well dressed, smartly turned out, and everybody's the same with good manners. So I started calling this gathering of people the Nirvana Club. And as time went on, we've had more and more meetings in person. I hold Zoom meetings with guys. And I decided, well, what we need, you can see my mentality here, we need a club tie. And we're going to call it the Nirvana Club tie, right? So one of the gentlemen who is in the Nirvana Club, he said to me, I've got a tailor. In fact, bizarrely, this gentleman was from Israel and his tailor was in Sheffield in England. After a lot of wrangling, we came up with this design. You're going to notice it looks very similar to previous ties which have passed through my life, but there's 2 stripes on this one, 2 sort of light coloured stripes. This was the most recent tie which I got, it's only been, I think it was October, this one came out. And yeah, so there we go, the Nirvana Club tie.
So it was more about the look and feel of the tie. You wanted a tie that just looks good. Every time you wear it, you're going to feel good.
The tie has played a disproportionately large part in my sartorial journey without me even realizing it, I think. So, yeah, these 5 ties, one I'm wearing, 4 on the table looking at me here, they signify quite a large portion of my life and they anchor me in certain points of history of my life.
That is really you've painted a picture that is much more in depth than even I expect. So, from the unity that can come through ties, from the symbolism that is part of some of your ties, from the memories that are connected to your ties, that really does give an example of how much ties have meant to you, how much ties have meant to men in our past, and how much I hope ties will mean going forward. Any last thoughts?
There's so much more to the tie than just a strip of material which hangs from your collar. There's a lot more to it than that. And when you delve into it, it's got a lot of meaning, certainly in this country anyway. If you know your ties, certainly if you know your army regimental ties, you'll never be without a friend in a place where there are other men who are dressed the same. So yeah, they're a big thing, certainly, and a big part of my life. And I think they always will be. And I passed that on to, I've got a son and, I've passed on this to him as well. So, I mean, he's not a big fan of wearing ties right now. He's still a teenager, but I'm sure as he grows and understands the value of it and how it can delineate you from those other folk in the street who choose to dress like a slob, they'll be treated like slobs. You dress like a gentleman, you'll be treated like a gentleman. And there'll always be value in that.
Well, Ash, thank you so much for joining me today and giving me some insight into neckties, not only from your personal life, but also from this rich culture of neckties that you enjoy in the UK. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I just want to echo what you said earlier. It's nice to find someone who cares about neckties as much as I do. So,
Ben, the pleasure has been all mine. It's been lovely to speak to you today. Thank you for having me.